Okay. All glories to Mother Rytasha, all glories to the religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Supreme Lord. Please, Lord God, help us live out these teachings and be an example in the world. Jai. So, the first half of the class didn't record when we last did it due to a technical glitch. Whoops. So I'm re-recording the first half. So picking up where we left off from One God, One Religion, and Mother Rytasha's own commentary. And on the last day, before leaving, she told them, "We are all eternally the servants of God. Some know it, and some do not. Like the three men who were working together laying bricks, and each was asked what he was doing. The first said, 'I'm making a living.' The second said, 'I'm making a wall.' And the third said, 'I'm building a great house of worship for the Lord God.' And standing on the dusty road leading away into the hills, she warned, 'Beware of those who preach that God's love is narrow, for they lie. It is they who are themselves narrow. For God's love is far greater than the minds of man's imagining. And the house of the Lord is a house large enough for the whole world to live in.' Again, I, Raja Khan, have written, as I have heard, and of what I have seen, but only a part. And many have asked, what is the way of her teaching by which a man may attain spiritual realization? And I have promised to write again of the path where she led, and where we follow. Jai. So, finishing up this book, let's read Mother Rytasha's commentary. And on the last day before leaving, she told them, 'We are all eternally the servants of God.' The important word here is all. And we have discussed that servant in the spiritual is the highest. In the material, it is not a high position. One serves God because one loves God, and that is the highest state. And in that love one serves, or does what is pleasing to God. Some know it, and some do not. Like the three men who were working together laying bricks, and each was asked what he was doing. The first said, 'I'm making a living.' The second said, 'I'm making a wall.' And the third said, 'I'm building a great house of worship for the Lord God.' Every job can become a holy action depending on the consciousness behind it. So a great saint said, 'We don't do big things. We do small things with big love.' And standing on the dusty road leading away into the hills, she warned, 'Beware of those who preach that God's love is narrow, for they lie. It is they who are themselves narrow. For God's love is far greater than the minds of man's imagining.' So when people speak, they're always talking about themselves and where they are at. The spiritual and the experience is beyond the material mind. That is why it cannot be well spoken of. And the house of the Lord is a house large enough for the whole world to live in. In the religion of love, everyone is now being invited to enter into the house of the Lord, and by simply following the message of God, make this world a paradise on earth. Again, I, Raja Khan, have written, as I have heard and of what I have seen, but only a part. Spiritual knowledge comes in two ways. First, you hear, and then you try to do what you have heard. It is in that one truly hears. And many have asked, what is the way of her teaching by which a man may attain spiritualization? And I have promised to write again of the path where she led and where we follow. Jai. Now moving on to the next book, Love. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and lived the days of my life in a blind night of despair, until the darkness in me, crying out to the light, by the grace of God, there appeared before me, as a sun risen a night of stars, the angel of Bengal. And it was she who with the light of knowledge dispelled the darkness of ignorance. And in the light I saw truth, and by this light have I lived. And this light was love, for truth lived is love. And leaving the dark, I clung to the light and followed, and so traveling with her was witness to many meetings, with saints and sinners, the innocent and the ignorant, those who came to listen and learn and lead, and those who came to kill. Of some I, Raja Khan, now speak here. It was in the latter days, in the scorching heat of summer, that she beneath a tree beside the sacred river sat. And there gathered some of the disciples, and one said, "Speak to us of love." And she spoke of God, saying, "Here is the beloved, the unknown lover who haunts the hearts of men. It is he for whom you search." And so long she spoke of love, and so long we listened, that for a time out of eternity heaven was brought down to earth, the hidden treasure was revealed, the lost secret found, as we tasted a depth of love beyond imagining, and the tree beneath which she sat, love-stricken, bowed down in reverence, and exquisite flowers burned like flames upon its branches. And news of this quickly spread, so that by evening a large crowd had gathered, and a pundit also among them. And when he saw so many assembled, he began to address the crowd, speaking at length of all the theories about the nature of God, first this school of thought, then that school of thought, and on he spoke. And my spiritual master sat and listened patiently. And when after his long discourse finally finished, he came and bowing low before her said, "Holy Mother, much have I heard about you, so that I am now anxious to hear what you may say about the nature of God." And she, in answer, said simply, "God in all things in God, yet he stands apart so that love may exist," and spoke no more. And the scholars said, "Speak more, for I do not understand." "No," she answered him, "you will not understand, for God is greater than man's mind may understand, and though you no doubt may possess great intelligence, and have studied many theories, what you know is not knowledge. And unless you become a devotee of God, you will never understand. So for me to speak further of the nature of God to you now would be like trying to explain color to the blind or music to the deaf. If it is really God you seek, come to love." And she explained to him the different steps upon the path by which a man may come again to God. And when she had finished, she waited upon his answer. And hearing and thinking, he said at last, "The cost is too high." "God is not cheap," she answered. But he had melted back into the crowd and was not heard of again. And she sighed, saying, "Thus it was ever so." And later told the disciples, "You will meet many such as he upon the path. They are the travelers who never arrive. They like the search for truth better than truth itself." Okay, let's go back up and read Mother Rytasha's commentary. Love. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. Of course, it is Raja Khan speaking, but he is the everyman, so all of us are born in ignorance. Coming into this world, it's like being hit on the head and having amnesia. We don't remember where we came from, or what we're supposed to do. We don't really know who we are. So anyone who comes to the world has no knowledge, so they make many mistakes and they therefore suffer. But some, and it is unusual, they understand the difference between what is illusion and what is not good for them, and what is truth and what is beneficial for them. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and lived the days of my life in a blind night of despair. Ignorance means you don't know the difference between what is beneficial and what is not beneficial, and therefore you make mistakes and therefore you suffer. Until the darkness in me, crying out to the light by the grace of God. When we, by some good fortune, realize the darkness of our lives, and not everybody does. Some people are very allured by the illusion and think, if I get this, if I get that, it's all future, I'll be happy. Once in our suffering, we cry out to God. It doesn't mean we make a formal petition. It's just in our despair, we cry out for the truth, for the light, for something beautiful and safe and secure. In other words, the spiritual. And God, who is always with us, understanding our hearts and our suffering and our desire, will send someone to help. So in this book, as I've explained before, it starts, I, Rajak Khan. But Rajak is in our place. He is the everyman. We are all in ignorance, and we all suffer in this world. Until the darkness in me crying out to the light by the grace of God, there appeared before me, as a sun risen a night of stars, the angel of Bengal. And it was she who with the light of knowledge dispelled the darkness of ignorance. And in the light I saw truth, and by this light have I lived. This is the key, and I can tell you many good things, and God can tell you many good things that will release us from the bondage of suffering, but it is in doing that we get free. It's like taking medicine. If you are ill and go to a good doctor, and the doctor knows the cure for your particular illness, and he gives you a certain kind of medicine, but if you don't take it, what will happen? Nothing. It's important we hear the word of God, we hear from the spiritual master, and it's not a made-up thing, and we try to do it. And I say the word try because we cannot really manage. God will help us. The spiritual is not theoretical. It's not philosophy. It is life. It is truth lived. Excuse me. And for truth lived is love. So we have an idea of what love is, which has been given to us by books, by the movies, by boyfriend and girlfriend, and we think it is feelings and romance. All those things are wonderful, but they are temporary. They come and go, and we, being spiritual, are not satisfied with the temporary. But real love is eternal, does not go away. Getting a little chilly. And this light was love, for truth lived is love. And leaving the dark, I clung to the light and followed. And this is important, that you follow the instructions. And the instructions are from God and for you. The spiritual master is only a via media, more or less a postman, bringing the message of God. This is the medicine for our suffering. In the material world, we are told if you get this, if you get that, if you get money, if you get a good job, if you get a certain man or woman, so many things, that you'll be successful and happy. This is not true. It will only be for a little bit, and then it will become bitter. And you will end your life in disappointment, because you will have wasted your life chasing that which is false. And so traveling with her was witness to many meetings with saints and sinners, the innocent and the ignorant, those who came to listen and learn and lead, and those who came to kill. Of some, I, Rajat Khan, now speak here. It's get real chilly, it's getting windy. Sorry if there's too much wind coming in the mic, my bad. Traveling with the spiritual master doesn't always mean physically being close to the spiritual master. Your travels are on the path to God, and it's by the instructions that you travel. And the traveling is always to God. It's not always that you need the physical presence of your spiritual master. And of course, today, with the technology, we can always be close to one another. When a child is very young, very immature, you'll see he'll cling to mama, hanging on to the skirt of his mother. But as someone becomes mature, he'll become independent, and it means mama has done a good job. So many people will come, and he's talking about the innocent, the ignorant, to listen and learn, because the first thing is to hear. Hearing is not separate from obeying, and it's not a control thing or a force. It is to come to an understanding of what is beneficial for the individual self. And those who can listen and learn, these will be the leaders in society. Society is meant to be led by spiritually advanced leaders. But if it is not, if it is led by misleaders, as we see in this age, then the whole society becomes polluted, and we see the people suffer. So sometimes you will get that, and sometimes you'll get people who will kill. They do not like the idea that there is one God, and that we are all the children of the one God, that the religion of love is inclusive. So when you begin on this path, you have to become very exclusive. In other words, in everything you're doing, is it for your benefit? Very single-pointed in your practices, in the way you live, that you're always thinking, is this helpful for my spiritual life? And you exclude everything that isn't. When you become a devotee of God, an advanced spiritual personality, then everything becomes inclusive, because there is nothing that is not of God that you don't see with the eyes of love, because you're in a state of ecstatic love. It was in the latter days, in the scorching heat of summer, that she beneath a tree beside the sacred river sat. Certain groups would tell you, this place is holy, this country is holy, this river is holy. There is nothing and no one that is not holy for one who has the eyes to see. And there gathered some of the disciples, and one said, Speak to us of love. And she spoke of God, saying, Here is the beloved, the unknown lover who haunts the hearts of men. It is he for whom you search. And so long she spoke of love, and so long we listened, that for a time out of eternity heaven was brought down to earth, the hidden treasure was revealed, the lost secret found, as we tasted a depth of love beyond imagining. What we call love in the material world, in our material consciousness, is not love. Basically, we're trying to squeeze some pleasure out of something or someone. So real love is between the soul, the eternal self, and God. And when you love God, you include everyone and everything, because everything is holy. And the tree beneath which she sat, love-stricken, bowed down in reverence, and exquisite flowers burned like flames upon its branches. Love is not just between people. It's between everything alive. Whether this is a tree, or an animal, a man, a woman, all these things have a soul. Some more covered than others, more conscious than others, but all holy. So even the tree, hearing about love, blooms. And it's interesting. We have a practice of chanting God's name. And one of the devotees in Mexico, when they chanted in the room, the flowers they had in the room that were never blooming began to bloom. And I have had the same experience in London. This is Mother Rytasha speaking, remember. I had a plant that only bloomed once a year, and in the room where I chanted God's holy name, it was always in flower. And news of this quickly spread, so that by evening a large crowd had gathered, and a pundit also among them. A pundit is considered a scholar, a religious man. And when he saw so many assembled, he began to address the crowd, speaking at length of all the theories about the nature of God, first this school of thought, then that school of thought. I don't speak about God or the spiritual world. I touch on it briefly. That is because the mind is material, and it is beyond the mind. Excuse me. The mind is a computer. You put something in, you press a button, something comes out. That is why we use mantra as our spiritual practice. Ma means mind, and tra means to rise above the mind. And the mantra we use is the name of God. And on he spoke, and my spiritual master sat and listened patiently. And when after his long discourse finally finished, he came and bowing low before her said, Holy Mother, much have I heard about you, so that I am now anxious to hear what you may say about the nature of God. And she, in answer, said simply, God in all things in God, yet he stands apart so that love may exist, and spoke no more. God is a person. In Genesis, he tells us we are made in the image of God. God is a person, but not his body. God's body is spiritual. He is complete. God is personal. He is impersonal. He is male. He is female. It is difficult to understand that. There are many theoretical things you can read about the nature of God. But we don't want to know about God. We want to know God. And the only way you can actually really love and know God is by falling in love with God. The Sufi's goal is to become what is called diwana, which means to be crazy in love with God. There's nothing that's not of God. But God is also a part in his personal feature, and that is the one you have relationship with. When you pray, and ultimately when you fall in love with God. And the scholar said, "Speak more, for I do not understand." "No," she answered him, "you will not understand, for God is greater than man's mind may understand. And though you no doubt may possess great intelligence, and have studied many theories, what you know is not knowledge. And unless you become a devotee of God, you will never understand. So for me to speak further of the nature of God to you now would be like trying to explain color to the blind or music to the deaf. If it is really God you seek, come to love." And how do we do that? So that's what we learn in spiritual life. And the wonderful thing is, it's not actually something we have to learn or have to add into ourselves. That nature of the soul is to be blissful. It's called ananda. It is beyond any type of bliss or happiness we have understanding of in this material world. And you're in that state because you are in a state of love. And you get in that state by taking away all the things that keep you from that experience. And the thing is, we do not want second-hand knowledge, somebody else's experience. We do not want to read about it. We have a very nice poster. It says, "Greater than faith is truth." So spiritual life is not about belief or faith. It's about the search for truth and the experience of your own individual truth. It goes on to say, "Is it better to believe in love or to be in love? Which do you prefer?" The spiritual master does not tell you the experience, but gives you the tools, the knowledge, the inspiration by which you may have your own individual experience. And she explained to him the different steps upon the path by which a man may come again to God. And when she had finished, she waited upon his answer. And hearing and thinking, he said at last, "The cost is too high." "God is not cheap," she answered, but he had melted back into the crowd and was not heard of again. We see people are very attracted, but will they do the necessary to get the result they're looking for? And she sighed, saying, "Thus it was ever so," and later told the disciples, "You will meet many such as he upon the path. They are the travelers who never arrive. They like the search for truth better than truth itself." I have seen, and perhaps you have seen, people that go from one seminar to another, one course to another, one book to another, and so they can speak well. But this is like searching for water, and you take a teaspoon of earth here and a teaspoon of earth there. If you want water, you have to dig deeply. Okay, pause there. And now we're going to backtrack to a few days ago for the questions and answer part. Yay. Okay. So does anyone have questions related to the class from the last commentaries of One God, One Religion, and what we just heard from the book Love, Mother Rytasha's commentary?
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah. Mother Rytasha said that some people rather to search for the truth, not truth itself. Is it the right thing I heard?
Mm-hmm.
So isn't it like if you want to find the truth, we first start by searching the truth, and by searching the truth, we are in the path to learn and get the truth.
Essentially what that means is some people like the truth for the search for truth better than truth itself. Means some people, they don't want to change.
Oh,
They'd rather feel that they're doing good, or feel that they know what they're doing, or feel they have a lot of knowledge, but not actually make any tangible changes in their life to realize that knowledge. We call armchair philosophers. Something to chat about, to just impress others with. But real spiritual life, real spiritualization is not just talking about it or making a show of it, but actually trying to apply it and change yourself from within to realize that knowledge through purification of your heart and mind. And as that man said, the cost is too high, because what she did was after he wanted her to explain more, then she explained all the steps upon the path, all the do's and don'ts of scripture, all the spiritual practices one does, what are some habits maybe to give up that will help you along the path, and et cetera, et cetera. And that man's like, the cost is too high, man. I don't want to do that. That's too much. And she said, God is not cheap. And another part of the books, there's a part where a man says to her, there are many masters out there who don't ask all this from people, do this and don't do that. Why don't you just cut those out, and then you can be very popular, have many followers. And she says, the difference between me and them is that they want to please their followers. I want to please God. And that's the difference between a real spiritual master. As it mentioned in the book, in her commentary, the spiritual master is more or less a glorified postman. They're just a letter carrier. They do not make their own spin. They do not deliver their own philosophy, their own twist on things. They just deliver the message as it was given. As their master did the same, as their master did the same, as their master did the same. Just like a postman delivering a letter. They don't open the letter and change a little bit. Dear John, oh, dear Susie, they don't change it. They just give the message. They don't change anything. And their only aim is to please the Lord, which doesn't always make you popular. The truth isn't a very popular thing, actually. What is popular are kind of the watered-down versions of it, or the compromises, or the things that basically are told to just make you enjoy what you hear, really. People are just pleased with what they hear. So most of these, false leaders or misleaders are people pleasers. They're politicians, really. They, as we learned in the commentary last time, they're like the politicians who promise everything, but then actually give nothing. Nothing actually useful or tangible. So the man who says he's a traveler who never arrives, meaning he doesn't actually want to do the work. He just wants to be puffed up and prideful and think that he's so advanced, thinks he's so smart, thinks I'm so spiritual, I'm so holy, I'm so this or that, but doesn't actually do the actual hard work, the actual self-improvement, the actual grind of cleaning your heart. They don't actually do it. They're a little lazy, actually, and puffed up.
And one comment.
Yes.
I can say after. I don't want to.
Go nuts.
Okay. I just really like another part that she explained about what is the true love is, and love is not just between humans, but also in every living being, that we can give love and care. That's this part is the understanding that we can. It's not love. We just between the humans. We just love each other. Every living being has a soul, and we can give love to them. Plants, animals. In this thing, some teachings, all of the teachings of Mother Rytasha is like we heard before, we understand them, but anytime I hear it, is like something new. Oh yeah, it's like a what is the word in English that like a poking you to understand and pay attention to that subject.
Poke is,
Yeah.
poke, pinch, prod.
Yeah. So it's very lovely. I really enjoyed that part too.
Well, yeah, two things what you said I'd like to comment. First being what you just said. Yeah, the spiritual knowledge is eternal. So you can read the same scripture, the same spiritual knowledge over and over and over again, and still keep learning new things. because the message is eternal. It's living. It's not some dry, static thing. It's ecstatic. So and actually, the more you progress upon the path, the more you keep purifying your heart, the more you keep hearing, chanting, remembering, you're not at the same level of consciousness you were then as you are today. So some things you weren't able to hear before, now you're able to hear. Because spiritual knowledge isn't heard with the head or the ears, it's heard with the heart. And the more your heart becomes open, the more your heart becomes purified, the more we're able to understand. And as she said, it's not like you're putting knowledge into you, not like you're adding something. It's already there. You're just uncovering it. And the knowledge, the teachings from the books, from the scriptures, they're just reminding us what we forgot. And yes, everything has a soul. Like this cute kitty right here. Tony. Tony the cat. Alex, you love Tony, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. So this love. See, even though he's in a cat body, he's not a human body. We love him because inside Tony the cat is a spirit soul. He is a beloved lover of God, just like all of us. It's just he has a cat body. We have a human body. We fortunately have, the golden ticket of a human form of life where we can actually engage in spiritualization. Now, unfortunately, Tony the cat, all he knows is eat, sleep, mate, defend. Play and get his next little enjoyment, right? Tony the cat can't, unfortunately, become self-realized because every soul is conditioned by the body and consciousness that comes with it, kind of like a different filter. So if you're using an app and you have different filters for your camera, well, imagine each different body that's living, moving or non-moving, has like a different filter that covers the mind. And some of those filters, some of that covering is a lot heavier than others. So the covering over Tony the cat is a lot stronger of a covering of the spirit soul's original consciousness than, say, the human is. So the human form of life is has the form of consciousness that allows us to now break free from the animal level of eat, sleep, mate, defend, and now inquire, who am I really? What is my real purpose? What is truth and reality? And where did I come from? The animals can't perceive these things. And, non-moving things like the trees, the cacti, the flowers, they're also spirit souls. Unfortunately, they are very covered over, and there's very small glimpses of their consciousness. But they are alive. And even science has proven that plants even actually feel pain. They've done some experiments. It's very interesting. So everything that lives, there is the presence of the soul. And that is where actually life comes from. Life doesn't come from an amalgamation of chemicals and material ingredients. Life comes from the soul. And when the soul leaves the body, we say the body is lifeless. And the symptom of life is consciousness. If there's no consciousness, then there is no life, there is no soul. So, does anybody else have a question? Everybody on Discord. Don't all unmute at once.
I had a question, but yeah, you answered it from your previous talking.
Oh, okay.
I was mostly just wondering what the role of philosophy is in theology. So when people try to understand what God is, or try to understand how they should relate to Him in a, I guess, philosophical sense, where they try to take each approach and decide what is right or wrong. Is that inherently right or wrong? Is that an okay approach? Because the pundit was kind of, not replied to per se, because she was like, this isn't the way. I was just wanting some more clarification on that.
Oh, you bet, brother. Great question. So there are kind of three steps that lead one to a spiritual path. The first step is realizing that this place is a world of suffering, that this isn't what it all cracked up to be, that everyone who enters has to die, has to experience old age and disease. Misery is caused by others, by nature, by our own minds and bodies. That it ain't all what it's cracked up to be. That there's got to be something greater beyond all this, and realizing that this world is a place of suffering is kind of the first step, which then pushes one to seek knowledge of the absolute truth, to want to figure this out. So the pundit, the man who's going through all these different theories and philosophies, he's looking for truth, and he's filling himself with all these different knowledge and theories, and that's not a bad thing. In fact, to inquire, who am I? To inquire, to seek knowledge, to desire knowledge is a very, very good thing. A lot of people, they don't. They're very complacent. They're just, with blinders on, going through the motions, eat, sleep, mate, defend. Most people are actually on animal level of consciousness, really. They're not even human, really, in a sense, because, look how people act. They're just acting on an animal level. Selfishly, just caring about themselves, caring about their bodily attachments and sense pleasures. Now, but the difference between the pundit and a real devotee of God is the sincerity. Now, the real devotee of God, whose desire is very, very sincere, like he really means it. Like he's not just wanting to, be an armchair philosopher to impress the ladies. He's not just, trying to be smart and knowledgeable for smartness and knowledgeness sake. He actually wants to come again to God. He actually wants to experience, not just know in theory, but to actually experience that love for real. Not just talk about it, like live it, right? And that requires change. That requires actually doing something. Now, the pundit, he's not actually doing something. He's just a professional reciter. He's just an orator. He's just talk. He's talking the talk, but he ain't walking the walk. And that's the difference between a sincere devotee of God and one who just likes to search for truth better than truth itself, is walking the walk, actually doing it. There's a lot of nonsense teachers out there that will say, do as I say, not as I do. That is nonsense. A real teacher, a real spiritual master, speaks only the message of God and lives the message they speak. They're speaking from actual experience. Their life itself is the example of the message. So that's the difference. So wanting to learn, wanting to understand, seeking knowledge, philosophizing here and there, these are all steps leading us onto the third step. And the third step is when our desire is so strong and so sincere that God, out of his mercy and love, hears our sincere desire and then leads us to a meeting with one who can guide us, a teacher. So meeting with the spiritual master is how we really skyrocket our spiritual life and really, really make progress. And as the old saying goes, when the student is ready, the master will appear. But not everyone's ready. And there's in that book, I believe it's Answers, the book Answers, or the book Desire, I forget. One of the chapters of Religion of Love book. There was that story of that man from ancient Greece, the wisest man of all of ancient Greece, and the student came wanting to be taught in the mysteries of life and death. And the wise man, this is actually a real story, the wise man takes him to a pool and shoves the prospective student head under the water. And the kid's just fighting. This has actually happened. I think it was Plato or Socrates, one of those guys. It's actually a real story. And then the guy, he struggles with a strength he didn't know he had, and he breaks free. And he's alive, right? And the master says to him, when your desire to live in that moment is the same as your desire for instruction in these mysteries of life and death, then will you be ready. When your desire is that strong, you can't live without it. I might as well die if I don't have this path. What's the point of living if I can't come again to love? So that's that sincere desire, sincerity. Oh. And the word disciple actually just comes from the word discipline. That's all it means, is discipline. Who's actually going to do the work? When you hear the instructions, are you actually going to follow and do it? Not just be like, oh, I know smoking's bad for me. Yeah, it's bad for me. It gives you cancer. You know, it's not. It's just talk. You know, they didn't actually hear. Remember, hearing means obeying. You know, hearing comes from the Latin root odiare, which is where audio comes from. The word audio. You know, everything related to hearing we say is audio. Audio files, auditory. But audio comes from the word odiare, which actually means to obey. It means when you hear something, you do something. It means you really heard. You know, one who is called comes. You know, and then Mother Tasha gives the example. I'm really hot. I'm thirsty. I've been talking for hours. I would really love to drink some water. And she tells everybody, you guys all hear me? They're like, yeah, we hear you. The back rows, can you hear me? Yeah, we hear you. And she just waits. No, none of y'all heard. Nobody offered me water. That's the difference between listening and hearing, and that's what the Pandit's doing. He's just listening and regurgitating what he's heard, but it's all secondhand knowledge. It's not knowledge that he's experienced. You know, true wisdom is knowledge experienced. You know, knowledge would be, I think I can climb to the top of that mountain. Wisdom is when you've already climbed and you're at the top, and yes, I know I can climb this mountain. That's wisdom, that you've experienced that knowledge. And the only way you experience it is by practicing it, by doing it. So, hope that answers your question, brother.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. I don't think the computer's picking up the audio, so when you guys talk, I have to do this to the microphone. Every day is different, I tell you. Anyone else have another question? I hear the Jeopardy music. Dun 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 dun. Or we could stop early if you guys are full. You know.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah, brother.
She's when responding to the Pandit. There's a sentence. She explained to him the different steps upon the path by which a man may come again to God. And he says the cost is too high. So I'm sure that's a long answer to this question, but I'm assuming it's, you know, the several steps that a man has to take to become God realized.
Sure.
So she kind of glossed over that in the book. There's a lot of steps, or is this a one-step process, a multi-step process? Is this just a path that you take and devote, or?
Like it's a 10-step process. I'm just kidding. No, well, it's actually kind of all the preceding chapters.
Right.
It talks about
Right.
and it's very simple. I can gloss over it too in a nutshell. Means just keeping the commandments of God, following the instructions in the scriptures, God's injunctions, and the teachings of the spiritual master, which are non-different. So you can tell a real spiritual master from the bogus ones is the real spiritual master doesn't speak anything that's different from the scriptures. And there's a threefold check system that you can use to verify whether so-called spiritual knowledge you hear is bona fide. Just like when we're in college, we need to have fact-checked, peer-reviewed articles, not just Wikipedia. Any Joe Blow can sign on Wikipedia and write whatever he wants and change an article. So it's not authentic. It's not legit. Guru, Sadhu, Sastra, the spiritual master in disciplic succession, the one who's been taught by a master who's taught by a master who's taught by a master in an unbroken lineage, going all the way back to when the message of God is received. Sadhu, the revered and recognized holy people, the saints, who really live the message, and the scriptures themselves, Shastra, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So if you hear some knowledge and you're not sure is this real or not, then You do your research, just like any good student in academia, and you see, can I fact check and find this corroborated by teachings of bona fide spiritual masters in disciplic succession, by actual living saints from the past or present, and from the scriptures. And if you can find that knowledge in all three sources, 1, 2, 3, then you're on safe ground. But if you just hear it from one source and you can't find it backed up anywhere, it might be something sus to it. I wouldn't bank your life on it. But if it's da 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 da, and then you're on safe ground, then okay, now I can try in faith, try to practice this. And she says, in the beginning by faith we act. And faith is the beginning, because we don't have the experience. So, when we hear these things in the scriptures, when we hear these things from the spiritual master, it's just, to us, it's just words. It's secondhand knowledge. But we have to have faith in the beginning that by the authority, I recognize and respect and revere the authority that this knowledge is coming from, that it's coming from the bona fide source. So in faith, okay, now I'm going to apply and do my best to practice it, because I trust the source it's coming from. It's like, if you want to know who your dad is, the authority is your mom, right? She's the authority of who the father is, right? Not the neighbors, You need to go to the authority. Kitty. So, beginning by faith we act, and the steps are outlined in the scriptures, and the spiritual masters teach them again and again. And there are some do's and don'ts, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. The 10 Commandments is one example of a list of do's and don'ts, right? And the practices that we do, there's 9 forms of devotional service that purify the heart. Mother Rytasha just speaks on 3, very simple: hearing, chanting, and remembering. Hearing the word of God, which means, as she said, 2 steps. First, we hear it from scripture, we hear it from the spiritual master, we hear it from the bona fide sources. And then the second step of hearing is actually putting your boots on and putting it into practice and walking that talk. That's climbing the mountain now. And then you experience it for yourself. So that's hearing, not just okay, yeah, I'll do that, and then you never do anything. Just talk. So hearing means obeying, actually doing it, practicing it, trying to apply in your life. Chanting the names of God. That's a powerful practice. As Jesus taught in the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So the Lord's name is holy. It's powerful. And just by having contact with God through his holy name, it purifies our hearts and just burns away all the impurities. And it's so powerful. It's such a simple practice that people don't realize just how powerful it actually is. Because it's so simple. You just chant the name of God. You don't need any money to do it. You don't need to be in some special place to do it. You don't have to join a group to do it. It's literally just you and any name of God in the revealed scriptures and just reciting them with all your heart, just wanting to be again with God and just hearing that transcendental sound vibration. It can purify your heart. That's mantra. Chanting a mantra, to transcend the mind. And the teaching of that is, whoever we associate with, we become more like. So you hang out with a bunch of people, eventually you're going to pick up some of their habits and their slang and how they talk. My wife married an Irishman, and now she talks with an Irish accent. Oh, sorry, my sister. My sister married an Irishman, and now she talks with an Irish accent. She ain't Irish. She ain't from Ireland, but association has an effect. We become like who we associate with. Association's powerful. And when the best association for a spirit soul, for any of us, is to directly associate with God himself. And the easiest way to do that is with his holy name, because God is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. What that means is, omniscient means he knows everything. Omnipresent, he's everywhere. And omnipotent, he's all powerful. And he's non-different from his name, from his message, from his glories, his pastimes. They're non-different. There's no difference between God the person and God's message and God's name. They're all absolute. This is beyond the mind. It's crazy. But this is how it is. It's amazing. It's like in the material world, if you say the word water, 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 you're not going to quench your thirst if you're thirsty just by thinking and saying water. You're not actually going to materialize water because the word, the name, and the object itself are different. But in the spiritual, everything's absolute. The name and the object itself are one and the same in the spiritual. There's no separation. So God and his name are one and the same. So when we chant God's name, we're actually directly associating with God through the medium of that vibration, that transcendental vibration. And just by associating with God, it's just like fire burning away all the impurities, just burning all our ignorance and all our forgetfulness to ashes. And so bona fide spiritual masters recommend we chant the holy names of God as a practice. And the third practice or devotional service Mother Rytasha teaches in the book is remembering God. And that basically means, as much as you can, try to be conscious of the spiritual. Try to remember God in your daily activities. And that's what she said in the class, that in the beginning of spiritual life, we're very exclusive. We're trying to safeguard our spiritual life as much as possible and be conscious of the effect everything around us is having on our mind. Because everything has an effect. All association has an effect. And it's not just people. People is the big thing we think about. Association, we think about people. But it's the food we eat, it's the music we listen to, it's the books we read, it's the movies we watch, it's the clothes we wear, it's the environment we're in, it's the thoughts we think. Whatever we associate with has an effect on our consciousness. And association is so powerful. And there's nothing more important than safeguarding our spiritual life. I mean, we got to take care of the body. Yeah, we have to feed it, bathe it, comfortable place to sleep, medicine when it's sick. So take care of the body. But we can't neglect the spirit soul, the real us. And that's why we have to be very exclusive in the beginning of spiritual life, so that we're trying to protect and progress as best we possibly can. Because when we first start in spiritual life, we're very weak. We're very, very weak. The material energy is so powerful. Oh my gosh, the illusion is so powerful. We're pretty much helpless against it. So we have to do everything we can to safeguard. Kind of like nurturing a little seedling, a little baby plant. You have to be very careful with it. Not too much light, not too much food, not too much water. Or not enough. Otherwise you're going to stunt and kill that little baby plant. But once it gets stronger and stronger, once it's really rooted, and it really starts taking off. And that's what she says. In the beginning, you're very exclusive, always remembering, what is good for my spiritual life, what isn't good for my spiritual life. This is the power of discrimination. To discriminate, this is good, this is not good. Well, not good and bad in a sense like, oh, that's bad, oh, that's good. No, but what is good or bad for your goal? What is beneficial for your goal? That's the proper word. What is beneficial, what isn't beneficial? What's beneficial for you may not be beneficial for another, and vice versa. But then as you get stronger and stronger in your spiritual life, and you're not going to be shaken off the path, then you start realizing more inclusivity, that like, wow, there really isn't anything that's not of God, or an expansion of his multifarious energies, or a manifestation of his material and spiritual powers. I mean, this is what isn't. Mother Rytasha said even the walls are holy. Everything, God is in everything. So in the beginning we're very exclusive because we're very weak, and then we advance more, we get more inclusive. Now we're very strong and just share that love all around. But in the beginning we have to really protect ourselves. So about those things that the pundit's saying the cost is too high, basically he didn't want to change. He was comfortable in what he thought was good, what he thought brought him happiness. But like all of us, he was just an illusion, thinking that all these things that are bringing me happiness are the all in all. But the happiness that they bring, the things of this world, it's temporary, it's limited. It gives you do get happy for a little time, but then eventually it palls and it gets dull, and and you want the next thing, or you need more of it, and more, and we keep going. So the Pandit, he was just complacent with his lifestyle and his way of living. He didn't want to change. He wanted to, didn't want to actually, didn't want to actually do any work. But yeah, the first step would be hearing the word of God and doing our best to apply it, and then chanting the names of God. Oof, very powerful. And there's some do's and don'ts, obviously, that are helpful. They're the sub-religious principles of religion. They're not the hard do's and don'ts. They're called sub-religious, meaning they are meant to bring us from the animal level of consciousness to the human level of consciousness. And then from human level, we can advance to first-class human and then to spiritual consciousness. And this is things like not causing suffering to other living creatures, not causing suffering to yourselves with polluting the body and mind, not fooling around, without commitment, so that you're not breaking any hearts or our own hearts. Let's be honest. Every love story is a tragedy. Oscar Wilde said. Oh, sure. I think I went over. I went over an hour, didn't I?
And no gambling.
Huh?
And no gambling.
Yes, in gambling, yes, that greediness, that mentality, trying to get something for nothing. But that's we'll get to that bridge when you get to it. Baby steps. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. Don't try and just swallow the whole trunk all at once. It's not going to work. You're gonna choke yourself. Baby steps. Just like little plant, you nurture it, let it grow little by little. Begin where you're at. Don't try and run before you can walk. We hear about the great ideals and the level of consciousness of all these great saints and sages, and they're at that level, and we shouldn't try to imitate them and try and, okay, now I'm going to be spiritual, now I'm going to do just what they did. No, you're gonna just fall off and you're on your face. And look like a fool doing it, honestly. But many of us have done that, especially in the beginning. We over endeavor a little bit. But anyways, I should stop there. Forgive me, brothers, if you had a question, please share it on the Discord, and I'll address it later. Or we can chat on Discord too, or I can mention the next class. But thank you all for coming. All glories to Mother Rytasha, all glories to the religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees. Jai.